the wisdom of the inner child. Hi, I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise your vibration of the body, mind, and spirit. Good morning. Thanks for joining me. So chances are, if you're an adult, you probably had that inner child kind of locked away in a corner, facing a corner like a dunce cap on, and not pulled him or her out in quite a while. And we are missing out on that gift of that inner child, the wisdom that it has to offer, because we have false beliefs around this inner child, this part of us that doesn't go anywhere just because we're in big bodies. So thanks for joining me today. Let's dive right in. We have a lot to cover. So the signs, if you're wondering, maybe yourself, you're wondering, is my inner child locked up? Maybe she's not. Maybe she's out and playing and having a good time and informing you, being your little informant, right? Or maybe not. So let's look at the signs that that inner child might be locked up. So there's no joy. Maybe you're missing joy in an area of your life. And it might be like, she's out or he's out in the relationship part of your life, but not in your work life. She's kind of locked up at home there, okay? So no joy in some area of your life, no passion in some area of your life, no playfulness, or no creativity, okay? Those four things, joy, passion, playfulness, and creativity, are those missing out of some area in your life? So personalize this talk. Don't just do it like an intellectual exercise or entertainment. This morning, use it for yourself. What area of your life lacks one of those four things? Joy, passion, playfulness, or creativity. Okay? And then also look, is there an area where you've subscribed to conformity, cynicism, resignation, or dullness? Like being numb or being dead inside. So is there an area of your life, this is kind of the other side of that same coin, where there is conformity? You're just trying to do what everybody else is to fit in or to get by or to feel secure, acceptance. Conformity. Cynicism, like you're giving up, like there's really no possibility of it working out. So you've just had a very resignation about you, right? And cynicism and resignation kind of go along like hand in hand. Cynicism is just thinking, it's not going to work out, or really not even being open to the possibility of anything. Resignation is kind of like more giving up, okay? And then the last one is dullness, right? Or numbing or dead to some area of your life. Okay, this is tough to look at, I know, but when we excavate the wisdom of the inner child, then we're going to reap the benefits that we have not been utilizing, not been calling on, probably for some time. So if, like, around the ages, you all know, if you've been around a young person around the age up until about 8 years old or so, there is a very beautiful playfulness. There is an honest about them, they're just absolutely taking in the world with a wonderment, with the eyes of a child. That's why we have that saying, right? So if we're looking through the eyes of a child up until the point that we're about 8, 9 years old, that childlike innocence and that way of seeing the world is a commodity. Anybody who's around children can feel the joy and the uplifting of the soul, of the spirit, when you're around a child who's seeing things and discovering things through those eyes of wonderment. But something happens around like 9, 10 years old, doesn't it? Parents, those of you who have kids this age or have had kids this age, something happens. There is a shifting from the development of the second chakra related to creativity, playfulness, joy, all of those aspects of being a child and the creative aspects of life, to the development of the third chakra, which is an egoic center. It's the center of our labels, of our identity, where we slap on a label so that we can fit into the group and kind of survive in our schooling or our community. We adopt a label, and that means a limitation of who we are in the world. We kind of forfeit our childlike imagination. We look down at that aspect. Even kids who are younger, they'll kind of make fun of kids who haven't quite lost that sense of awe, sense of purity of imagination. And we do it in order to conform. We do it in order to be accepted. All right, so there's a very real transition that happens from about around 7, 8, 9 years old into that next phase. And that's normal. That's part of our domestication and the way that things are, at least right now. And we really exchanged the limitless possibility of our imagination and how we're creating ourselves for conformity in order to gain acceptance. So that's a little bit painful to look at, obviously, but let's go into the 3 false beliefs. 2 of them are very similar, okay? But 3 false beliefs that keep us from harnessing the wisdom of the inner child, because we're taught, leave those childlike ways behind, join the real world, step up and don't be such a kid. Like, you got to be an adult, get the respect by denouncing these childlike ways, right? But we know, and we're going to get into this in the talk in just a little bit, that some of the most successful people known to us, the entrepreneurs, the visionaries, were the ones who didn't do this. They didn't leave their inner child behind. They learned how to partner with him or partner with her, and didn't let her drive the bus of life, and the chaotic craziness of the child, of very willful, very tumultuous emotions that can come up. They don't let the child drive the bus, but they do keep him or her in the backseat of reference, saying, hey, what do you think about this? Let me check in with you. Like as a consultant, rather than, it's funny to think about a child being a consultant, but if we don't consider our inner child as a consultant, we are missing out majorly and massively in being a successful overall human being. So let's look at those 3 false beliefs. All right, the first false belief, being an adult, here it is, being an adult is serious and void of emotion, right? How does it mean to be an adult? Oh, put all together, your tight little tie and your suit and your pressed outfit and your clothing is all perfect, and you're going to your job and wanting to be perfect and executing the perfect strategy at work and the perfect home life and the perfect body and the perfect relationship. I mean, really, it is so stifling to believe this false belief that being an adult is serious and void of emotion. Now, does it mean that there are some times that we actually need to take a moment and consider something that might be difficult? Yes, absolutely. But there are different ways to do it. You might never have done that yourself, and it's okay. Like, we're not typically taught this. So have compassion with yourself first and foremost. But there's a bigger trap here. So being in bigger bodies, like adult bodies, we forget that inner child remains. That inner child, just because we grow up into tall selves or bigger bodies or get real jobs or have families, right? That inner child remains. And if untreated or ignored in some way, or not considered or not integrated into our full awareness, we'll have some problems. Major anger, major resentment, and also a loss of major influence and wisdom will be forfeited. So let's look at this. So the gift of the inner child, when we look at this, is the gift of raw emotion. Now, you've all probably seen or had your own child throw a tantrum in public and kick and scream in the middle of a store or the middle of public, and it's very mortifying. It's embarrassing. Everybody is like, oh my goodness, really? And we look at that child like, oh, little Brad having a tantrum, okay? Now, I'm going to suggest something that might seem a little radical to you, but just because you're an adult body and you don't kick and scream in the middle of a store in public doesn't mean you stopped having tantrums. You just put them up here. Okay, we get very clever about it. Put on a smile and think whatever we're thinking, or have this sort of tantrum-like behavior of that raw emotion in our brain, and that is burning us up inside. That's not listening, or we're suppressing those more raw emotions. So if we're doing that, and no, I'm not suggesting you have a tantrum in the middle of a store in public. Hello, no. But we need to utilize that wisdom with an adult perspective, rather than just try and pretend it doesn't exist, or quench it, or kill it, or numb it, or suppress it in any way, because we don't want people to find out that we have emotions, because that's not being adult, right? Remember, false belief, being an adult is serious and void of emotion, okay? So let's look at this. The emotional wisdom. There's a beautiful quote by Florence Nightingale, who she did amazing things with her life because of her passion for nursing, and she really saved so many lives because she improved the sanitary conditions for so many, and she really changed that profession. Huge, huge, beautiful, beautiful goal, a gorgeous leader in a way that is passionate, allowing that drive within her. Remember, no passion means you have your inner child in the corner somewhere. So Florence Nightingale said, I think one's feelings waste themselves in words. They ought all to be distilled into actions which bring results. So again, I think one's feelings, one's emotions waste themselves in words. So just talking about it, just talking. Think about talk therapy and just talking about your emotions until you're blue in the face. They ought to be distilled into actions which bring results. So if you think about the emotional wisdom of a child, that inner child, when you're feeling that something's off and you're getting angry about it or there's grief around it, your inner child, your inner guru, your little mini guru inside is saying, this isn't okay. This isn't okay. Let's do something about it. Instead, we'll numb ourselves or give ourselves some sugar like we give kids just to quiet them or suppress whatever is going on with them that's bothering us. And we will lose that emotional wisdom. So there's a dysfunctional pattern here. It's the dismissal of emotions and passions. And we forfeit that internal guidance system of those emotional indicators in our lives, okay? Just because of that false belief that being an adult is serious and void of emotion, all right? And when we'll even scold ourselves or stifle or numb ourselves to this because we're afraid that we're going to go to an extreme. Like, we don't need to go kick and scream on the floor of a store to know that we're having an upset, that there's an emotional upset, there's anger, there's grief, there's sadness, there's something that feels off, to us. So we don't have to go to that extreme of kicking and screaming, but we can say, okay, let me listen to this. This is wisdom. This is my emotional guidance system that's saying, hey, something's off. We're not robotic, guys. It's a false belief. It's a lie to tell yourself this. Listen to your emotion and you'll be wiser for it. That takes us into the second false belief, which is very similar to the first, which is being an adult means working hard by utilizing logic and reasoning, okay? Being an adult is working hard by utilizing logic and reasoning. So, right, kick playfulness out the door and kick intuition out the door, not working smart, but working hard. That means being an adult. So the gift of the inner child here really is in connection with that second and the sixth chakra, that gut intuition, that higher seeing place that works with our inner child's gut instincts, okay? So the gift of the inner child here is intuition. And our intuitive wisdom here is that guidance of the inner compass, and it does supersede logic and reasoning. Why do we know something sometimes? Why do we have that gut instinct? It's a knowing that is far beyond logical deduction and reasoning. So if we're telling ourselves, oh, that's stupid, you can't prove it, everybody else says this, but something should be going the other way, you'll dismiss it. You'll dismiss that intuitive gut raw sensation or that gut knowing of the inner child for adulting. All right, that false belief. Being an adult means working hard by utilizing logic and reason. Now, it doesn't mean that logic and reasoning are the enemy or working hard is the enemy. Of course not. But are you working hard or are you working smart? Okay, that's very important because joining the real world. I once had my older sister and she was just trying to protect me, obviously. I was like 23 years old and I was teaching yoga. I was recording my first album of music, original music. And she called me one time and I said, it's a struggle, but I love what I'm doing. She says, you're going to have to join the real world someday, Anne-Margaret. And I didn't say it to her at the time because I didn't want to upset her, but she was an attorney at that time. She was like 31, 32 and living in Delaware. I was living in New York City. We had very different lifestyles. But in my mind, I thought, I don't want to join your real world. That's not the world that I want to live in. I want to live in a different world, a different reality. And I felt very foolish with that being my initial response. But you have to remember, guys, there is no one reality. There is no one path. Now, many of us conform to paths because they're more acceptable, they make more money, they provide more security or a pretense of security. But so oftentimes when we do this, and I know you know what I mean, we forfeit that unique gift that we have for the world, that intuitive playfulness or that creativity that's only ours to offer, and the steering of the course of our lives from a place of joy, passion, excitement. And we cut all of that off for conformity, for acceptance, for a false sense of security or doing the right thing or living in reality or the real world. So remember, this is a huge trap that we most of the time we'll do that with our work, but sometimes we do it with our family too. Oh, must get married the second I get out of college and then get a job. And then we don't even end up marrying the person who's right for us because we're more attached to joining the real world of how things should look, versus really what our passion, what our drive, what our intuition is guiding us towards, okay? So we can resign our passion and we can settle for the status quo. Ooh, huge trap, right? So that false belief, being an adult, means working hard by utilizing logic and reasoning, ignoring intuition, ignoring passion, ignoring working smart by being creative about how you're working. Think about the most successful people in the world, guys. Keep that in mind. Let's go to the third false belief here, okay? Third false belief, being an adult means growing out of childlike playfulness and imagination. Grow up. Leave those childlike ways behind. Your imagination, you're just full of it. It's just going to lead you down a path of ruin. It'll never lead to anything. Think about any inventors, any incredible entrepreneurs who dared to dream. They never thought that it would be easy, and it never was, right? Any entrepreneurs out there know that, any inventors also know it's never easy. But it's filled with passion and drive, and your work is your play. You don't succeed as an entrepreneur if you are hoping for an easy life, being your own boss without actually doing the work. So the false belief means growing out of being an adult means growing out of that childlike imagination and playfulness. Oh, we can cut ourselves off from so much wisdom here. Let's look at it. So what we're doing when we cut ourselves off from our imagination and our playfulness is we're forfeiting a manifestation power that we've got. We think manifesting is all about hard work and diligence and logic and reasoning and follow and work yourself up in the company and do blood, sweat, and tears, right? But the imagination is quite possibly 60 times more powerful than hard work. Creating through the mind, being able to see something that wasn't there before, and doing it from a joyful, playful, creative place. If we are too serious, we blind ourselves with significance. If we're too serious and we're like, oh, it's so much stress, we'll blind ourselves from that fearful place of significance, of trying to get that false sense of security, okay? And our tribal acceptance. We want tribal acceptance, so we won't dare to dream because people will make fun of us. The dreamers are the ones who are hung out to dry until they're the ones who own everything, right? Since they're the ones who actually provide something that you're now paying a service for, or you're glorifying because they've changed your life forever with the research or the science or the technology or the passion they've instilled or offered you. So remember, the gift of that, or what we do, I should say, is that in forfeiting this manifesting power, we're lying to ourselves about what's possible. We're limiting our potential with conformity, with security, and with this false need for acceptance. We don't live in tribes that our survival depends on mob mentality and being able to survive the elements, right? We have the capability and the luxury right now to dare to dream, to go out on our own, to listen to the wisdom of that inner child. And if you think about the most successful people in the world, from, there's so many examples, but you think of like Einstein. I love that picture of Einstein with his tongue out to his chin, like being absolutely silly. He's a great example. Or Mozart, right? If you've ever seen the movie Amadeus, he was like a little child playing and creating. I think about Billie Jean King, the U.S. tennis legend, who pursued her passion for sports and She is the one who completely defied that, you know, a woman couldn't beat a man in the Battle of the Sexes tournament, right? She won like 20 Wimbledon titles. But she totally inspired people because she really believed in that playfulness and dedication to her sport. She couldn't just go out there and play anytime she wanted to. It required immense discipline to be that good at her sport. I think of Amelia Earhart also being the first female pilot. What other examples here? Like J.K. Rowling's was living off, she was really just like living off of state benefits, and in 5 years was a multimillionaire, selling 400 million books about a fantasy that she had in her mind called Harry Potter, right? So I mean, there's so many great examples of this by listening to our inner child, listening to the wisdom of the inner child, not letting her drive the bus, but being a consultant, a reference point for us to keep leading us towards a life that we love, a reality that we can thrive in. All right, and not conform to or resign ourselves or throw in the towel or anything like this. We don't want to have the cynicism that never leads to happiness or the resignation. So I'm going to leave you with 4 questions you can ask yourself, okay? That'll help you kind of get back in to that inner childlike playfulness, all right? What brings you joy? You can do some journaling meditations by this if you'd like, all right? What brings you joy? What passionately excites you? What passionately excites you? All right, when you think about it, it's like you get out of the bed in the morning, jump out of bed and go for it. It's exciting, it's passionate, right? And if you're like nothing, you've had your inner child in the corner way too long. Go do something fun today, okay? 3rd question, if money didn't matter, what would you create? If money didn't matter, what would you create? Because that's way more profitable in the long run than the short-term job that keeps paying your bills, right? You have to have a mindful transition. But if money didn't matter, what would you create? Perhaps that is the purpose. That's the sacred soul purpose calling you, okay? And then the last one is, with a child's purity and faith. A child is so inspiring because they have a purity about them and a faith, a true faith. Can you believe in miracles and in the divine unfolding of your life? What would that look like if you had that childlike innocence, that faith, that purity? All right, guys, if you need extra support, reach out to me. I do one-on-one coaching, channeling, and even relationship coaching with your partner, okay? So reach out to me. And we have a couple events coming up I put in the notes, as well as essential oils that help to really excavate that inner childlike energy and that wisdom. So remember, honor that inner child today, and feel free to share this video. Help me spread the message so that people can reconnect with that themselves. All right, until next time, keep raising the vibration. Bye, everybody.